I've been caught, but I'm keeping on check. And I've been taught, but I'm keeping on check. And I've been broke.
Good afternoon, good evening. You're back on Equal Footing. This is Dove Tusman. Here we go again, back in the sphere of relationships, our favorite topic. Yes, we're going to look at Jewish wisdom around this one. You know, as we were preparing for this show, our wonderful producer, my partner, Leah, was saying, yeah, but tonight's not really a Jewish show. It's more about like just an everyday thing. I said, what? That's what our show's about. The everyday life through the prism of Jewish wisdom. This is about one of those, I get though why she said it, because it's about this, the banal, the difficult dynamic all the time with our loved ones, our wife, our husband, our girlfriend, boyfriend, children, parents, siblings, communication. The essence of everything. Do you know that there are various studies, and the most recent one I saw was a Psychology Today one that our producer put in front of me. It's on the screen. That 68% of divorces, the number one reason cited by the couples is bad communication breakdown. You talk to any relationship therapist, whether they're a family counselor working on marriages in trouble, or whether they're working on, you know, rebellious kids and relationship with parents, sibling rivalry, they'll tell you the same thing. It's about communication. You know, a lot of it is what I'm saying, you're not hearing it in the way that I think you should be. I'm not saying it in the way that you know how to hear it. It's about different styles of communicating and learning not only our own, but as, I would say more importantly, the styles of our loved ones. Now, said, how do we tie this into Jewish wisdom? Well, at the core of Jewish life is Shalom Bayis, peace in the home. Shalom Bayit, as our guest would say it tonight. I'm going to get to our wonderful guest. And so we're full up, by the way. We got full studio here. I think it's the first time in a while we filled all 4 mics, and we got a wonderful guest on the line. But at the core of Judaism is this concept of peace in the home. Nothing else really works if the foundation isn't right. But is there actual halachic guidance? Are there laws around the way we should communicate as a couple? Or is it anecdotal? Do we look at the patriarchs and the matriarchs, the way they get along? Well, fortunately, I don't have to answer these questions. That's going to be on our wonderful guest on the phone, calling in. He's a relationship therapist and an ordained rabbi, Rabbi Andrew Sklarz. He's been on before. I love having him on. Also challenges me. I bet he's going to make fun of me tonight like he did a little bit last time. All right. Rabbi Sklarz, upon his ordination from the Reform Movement Seminary. Yes, it's the Reform Movement. We are open-minded here on Equal Footing, where he studied at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York. Rabbi Sklarz came to the Reform Temple of Putnam Valley. He expressed, I love the way he said it, about his first congregation experience. It was a 6-year love fest with his congregation. The congregation grew dramatically, as did the associated religious school, and simultaneously he went out and studied and received his master's in social work. I said he's a rabbi and a therapist at Fordham University, ultimately worked with clients at the Mead Counseling Center in Greenwich. I think that's Greenwich, Connecticut. Rabbi Sklarz believes that there are myriad ways in which people can connect to Judaism. As a self-described nonconformist, non-conforming Jew, he strongly encourages a questioning of the status quo. And that he has in common with many of the rabbis in this program, and actually has been on in intellectual exchange with Orthodox rabbis before. So familiar with our milieu here. But most of all, Rabbi Sklarz, with his warm and compassionate manner, seeks to create an environment in which Judaism is not only relevant and meaningful, but joyful. So Rabbi Sklarz, welcome to Equal Footing again, and looking forward to you bringing joy to what for many couples is a really challenging topic.
Thank you so much, Dove, and thank you for your really, really kind words.
Well, heartfelt. And that way I'm also trying to buy some political capital, so you're not too hard on me as we get into some of this stuff.
The sentiments are mutual, though. Very mutual.
Thank you. All right. So once again, we have my partner in crime here, our wonderful producer and showrunner, Leah Mazniku, is here in studio. It's been a while, Leah. You're usually at Kehila Jeshron on Thursday nights.
Yeah, I've been busy. I have my hands full.
You just couldn't avoid coming in for this one.
I just could not resist.
I wish everyone had a visual of what I'm looking at right here in the studio.
I wish they did.
We have our good friends, Leah. We'll disclose these are our good friends. We're not going to say their last names, so they can feel free to get a little crazy on the air tonight. We're delighted to have them in studio. They're a beautiful couple, beautiful in every way, outside and inside, and agreed to come on tonight under a bit of a pseudonym, to open up about their communication challenges, some of the stuff they've overcome, some of the stuff they're working on, in kind of a way that we hope our listeners will be able to say, yeah, I identify with that. Whether you're a couple listening, one side of a couple listening, tonight, or a single, reflecting on the things you've done wrong in a past relationship. Hopefully what they'll be able to, they're being vulnerable here on your behalf and get into some of these issues. So I'm going to introduce here Diane and Eddie Love.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
We're excited to be here.
Very excited.
And I'm going to ask you guys both to speak into the mic, and if the red button isn't on, then hit it until you see it on. Diane, I think yours is on. Eddie, I'm
Mine
not
is
sure.
on.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Oh,
there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Eddie Love. Okay. Rabbi Sklarz, there's a lot of chatter about communicate. Let's start with the kind of the modern therapeutic perspective. This show's about communication in couples. You hear about different communication styles, like the passive style, the aggressive style. We all know about passive aggressive mix. And then what seems to be kind of more of an ideal, an assertive but compassionate style. First of all, is it good for us to look on the internet and kind of figure out what style we are? Is that a good place to start, or is that stuff meaningful?
With all due respect to the internet, I don't think we should seek elsewhere to define ourselves. I think we look inside and get a pretty good sense rather than pigeonholing ourselves in any box, because we're all unique people.
So I think maybe then if we're not going to put it in boxes, I'll just put out a couple of these ideas around how we communicate. And I want you to, if you will, tell me if it's a fair description of some of, let's say, your patients that you've seen or your clients that you see.
Sure.
Some people get into trouble because they're passive communicators. They don't express their feelings or needs enough. They defer to others for decision making. They want to avoid tension and conflict. They kind of will let things build up, anger or resentment, instead of expressing that. I at certain points of my life identify with that. Is that kind of a category, if you will, or is that reflective in your client base?
I think we all have the potential to manifest different kinds of characteristics and different moods based on not only ourselves and our own inner dynamics, but also within the context of the relationship we're having, because there's different chemistry between every two human beings. So it's not that I'm trying to say that certainly there are passive aggressive people. There are people that are in codependent relationships, absolutely, but it's not black and white, because we shift, and so much is contingent upon the external forces, especially with our relationships with different people.
So I think we all have at times been irked by what I would call the aggressive communicator, someone who's expressing feelings and needs, like seemingly ignoring any kind of feedback, folks that are easily get defensive and hostile, kind of don't seem to be too concerned about hurting others. It is, if you looked at the quote unquote passive communicator and the quote unquote aggressive communicator, is where do you think the bigger problem is, if you will, in couples communications?
Every relationship is a two-way street. So can you lay a blame on one person? Certainly one party could do something that could be incredibly hurtful to the other. But couples dance. They either dance with one another, hand in hand, arm in arm, both figuratively or metaphorically, or they dance away from one another. And they do that in tandem with one another. So it's hard to put the blame unless if one does something that is just so hurtful to the other or dishonest that therefore there's the retaliation going on.
It seems that a part of it is, and I'm going to defer here to Leah as another therapist here. It seems that part of it is about just knowing how you express yourself best, even with all its faults, whether you're passive, whether you're too aggressive, because just being clear so that you can kind of know where your pitfalls are, be able to warn your partner about maybe even early in the relationship of your foibles in the way you express yourself.
Yeah, but that requires a certain degree of self-awareness and self-knowledge. What I would like to say is that we're different. We communicate differently at different stages of our lives. For example, there was a stage of my life where I deeply identified as a passive-aggressive communicator. And although I might revert back to that stage, I now would like to identify as like an assertive communicator. So we flow in the way that we communicate.
Now, I'm going to probably trip up as I explain these, but I guess if someone's passive aggressive, sometimes like using sarcasm or indirect communication to make a point without really telling you what's going on. So it's like subtle, maybe anger or resentment, but it's on the surface. You might be just getting a smile.
Yeah.
And then the assertive communicator, and this I'll put out, I want to get Eddie and Diane in the conversation in a second here, but I'll put out to the two therapists here, on this show, seems to kind of, in my layman's, dumb brain, seems to be the best, right? It's like you're assertive, you're direct and you're honest, but at the same time, you're not aggressive. You're respecting the feelings.
Yeah, it's what
others.
you aspire to be in everyday life. Now, of course, things are imperfect, and we come across people that, although we aspire to be very assertive in our communication, they inspire different parts of us. Like they inspire us to be more aggressive, for example. But yeah, that's the assertive type of communication.
Yeah, it's like clear, direct. People often misinterpret assertive as aggressive. I think just the word sounds like, but it's not. It's just, direct. And so as we were going through the little bit, I don't know, this is a bit of the more banal, the boring stuff here up front, the definition stuff. Eddie and Diane, I'm looking at you here in studio. I'm going to put you on the spot. Eddie, what kind of communicator are you?
I would say I'm pretty assertive now, but in my past, I was very introverted in that. I would hold on to everything that would bother me instead of just expressing it to the people that I love and care about. And so for now in my life, I'm assertive, but I have to be careful with that because of how large I am actually physically.
Right, Eddie's a big man.
And so not just in my relationship, but in professional circumstances, I have to be assertive, but yet restrained.
Yeah.
And that's a big, something.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually great self-awareness. Because having known you for quite some time, you're very like direct and kind, and you always make like really clear eye contact. So I'm probably biased.
Teddy bear.
I'm sorry. You have
First of all, give me the bad about Eddie's communication, then tell us what kind of communicator you are, Diane.
I hate to start with the bad, but I think Eddie's like spot on. He knows exactly where. I mean, I think in that way, I found him very sexy because he's self-aware. He can see inside of him that he can be much more assertive and make the message heard without all the noise that he can produce out of anger or frustration. When he puts his mind to it, he can really capitalize on that. Like that's a really good side of his personality. But I do realize that when I don't see his, when he doesn't have it in him to kind of see my side of it, we'll inevitably get into arguments just because I think we're both very stubborn. Yeah. But in that way, we can also come back and see like, hey, we don't need to go there.
I would say that we always come back to knowing that we want the best for each other.
Sometimes it gets
since
really
I met her, that's what I've always wanted, and I think that's always what she's wanted for me. Marriage aside, any other, professional circumstances aside, we've always wanted the absolute best for one another. At the end
that
of the
has
day.
to be.
In one of our, we're going to take our first break in a second, but in one of our pregame discussions, and probably Rabbi Sklar's is sitting there taking notes, because we're going to actually we're going to do some pretend, not a therapy session, of course, in reality, but we're going to, you get a little bit of free therapeutic input here from Rabbi Sklar's and from Leah after the first break. But when one of our pregame conversations, Eddie, you said, sometimes we'll fight like cats and dogs, but we come back. We come back to the table.
And sometimes we see the progression. It gets better and easier every time.
Yes.
I mean, even by like a second.
Just by
but
a second.
It gets back.
Maybe
it gets better. Yeah.
Now, obviously, you guys aren't here on a Jewish network, and we have lots of different types of listeners. We have some listeners that have been together for 30 years and never been with anybody else, and then we have other listeners that have been divorced 3 times and come from a different context. I want to ask before we go to our break, just so listeners can kind of give them more 3 dimensions view. Are you guys religious at this point in your life? What's your relationship with God? And if the rabbi gets into some of that, are you guys going to listen or roll your eyes?
For myself, I would say that I believe in a higher power, and I believe that it's all about your outlook in life. And even if things are hard and tough, when you have a good outlook, you will always overcome whatever you're facing. So, and in that, I believe in the higher power. I believe there is a good force in this world.
Yeah. I suppose, we always meet on that. I think that we are very much in the same place. Like, we believe that there's something higher than us that makes us, kind of want to get better every day. And, I mean, I'll definitely take a note. Rabbi sounds, like he has a lot of things to share that would be really useful.
When it comes to faith, would you guys say you're kind of in a similar place in terms of your?
I think so.
Yeah, it seems like it. Because, as you look at the stats on why couples, when they say they break up because of bad communication, it's often around things like finances and God.
Yeah.
It's like the top 2.
Big topics.
Yeah. And fidelity, which is a really important one we'll get to for the break. Here with Rabbi Andrew Sklar's, wonderful therapist and executive producer, Leah Masniku, and Eddie and Diane Love here in the studio. We are talking about the essence of everything. Communication.
Communication is key.
In love and marriage. We'll be right back. All right. Well, you know about this sponsor if you've been listening to this program even for a week. They're a wonderful sponsor for a long time. And this sponsor embodies what this program is about, which is talking about difficult stuff without shame and moving forward in a positive way. In this case, it's about erectile dysfunction. Not tonight's show, but this sponsor. Sponsors Manhattan Medical. You don't have to be in Manhattan or the New York area. Anywhere in the United States, you can avail yourself of Manhattan Medical's new effective therapy and enduring therapy for erectile dysfunction. It's not anything to be ashamed about. You're talking about almost 70%, over 2/3 of men are affected by ED in their lifetime. And there are other options out there other than these expensive blue pills, which many people cannot take because of comorbidities and other issues and side effects. Well, Manhattan Medical employs an ED therapy that's been around in Europe for a long time, and Canada as well, and just in the last few years in the United States. It's called Gainswave. You gotta check it out. It is non-invasive, it's surgery-free, and it is painless. Put an end to the emotional stress, the stress as a couple when you're not dealing with ED. There are options out there with no side effects. And for the vast majority of patients, over 90% of patients, the Gainswave ED therapy from Manhattan Medical has enduring and wonderful results. In fact, there's a listener in this program who's in his 80s who reports that Gainswave ED therapy, Manhattan Medical, has had a enduring and permanent positive effect on his sex life. Here's the number. Get ready. Take out a pen. Write it down. Put it in your phone. 888-ED-CURE-9. That's 888-ED-CURE-9. In numbers for Manhattan Medical's ED therapy 888-332-8739. I'm going to give that number one more time, but I want to tell you that if you call in and you mention that you heard about Manhattan Medical's Gainswave therapy for erectile dysfunction on Equal Footing, you have to say you heard about it on Equal Footing. You will get a free consultation. You cannot get that if you just walk in off the street or call them. That's a $250 value. You can do it in person or by Zoom. One more time, the number from Manhattan Medical's ED therapy, 888-332-8739.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. I've been told.
It's fun being in studio, the full studio. All that time in COVID, and we had I was all alone here, and now there's 6 of us, including Dimitri. Quiz for a listener. Who's that other human that I haven't mentioned? All right. There is someone else I didn't mention. It's here in studio. Okay. So I have to give out another number. I want listeners, please, to participate. You can call in live and tell us about your communication breakdown. Great Led Zeppelin song. Or the amazing communication you have in your loving relationship. The number to call in and participate live. You can give your real name. You can give a kind of real name. Whatever. 718-303-9090. That's 718-303-9090. Let the phone ring. Please be patient. If you don't get picked up right away, we have a small switchboard. And then if you want to text or WhatsApp in, SMS or WhatsApp in a question or comment to Rabbi Andrew Sklarz or Leah Mazniku or Eddie and Diane Love, the number, don't call this, please. This is for text, or WhatsApp, 917-428-4062. But compose your question or comment quickly, because if you get it, often they come in right at the end of the show and then we can't get to them. Again, 917-428-4062. Rabbi Sklarz, you've been so zen. First of all, how do Eddie and Diane sound to you? Like if they walked into your office, you had a blindfold on, just heard those first couple of minutes, do you think you're going to be able to work with them?
I think I'd love to work with them, but first of all, I'd love to just meet them. They sound like awesome people.
Oh.
They sound connected and respectful of one another, and that there's a lot of beautiful stuff going on there.
Oh, I want to meet him. Where are you?
We good. Let's try this
we'd
out.
Love to meet. Absolutely.
Eddie and Diane, can you tell Rabbi Sklarz your biggest problem area right now in communication? Where are you screwing
Nice
up?
segue, by the way.
I'll start out
Go
actually
for
real
it.
quick. For myself, I work in the TV film industry, and I've been out of work for quite some time because of strikes and other union issues going on right now. And for me, for a person that hasn't stopped working since he was 14, it's a very big issue where I feel very depressed and very useless. And I am very conscious of it, and I continue to be conscious of it, that I have been taking it out on the people that love and care for me the most. And I'm coming to terms with that more and more, and now trying to figure out how can I take all that energy I have and all those resources I know I can utilize out in the world and come back home and be a valid communicator for my wife and hopefully in the future my children.
I'm tearing up. What's going on? Okay, that is really, you have to start with yourself. I was going to say, I thought you were going to start with me. I was like, that's valid. We just fought off the way here. No. Honestly, I think, I love learning from every time we do argue, because I truly just want to get to the bottom of it. I don't truly want to hurt anyone's feelings. I've never been that way, but the passionate side of us both always sounds like we're yelling with this anger that we never end up with.
Intense. You can be pretty intense with each other.
Sure. And I love that about him. I think when I met him, I said I've met a match, because he puts me in my place, but sometimes I don't like it, and then he calls me out on it. And he's like, "You don't like it. Right. You don't like it," and I'm like, "No, I don't." But I love it.
I want Rabbi Sklarz to be able, and therapist Sklarz to be able to help. I know it's hard. I'm asking you to be really vulnerable.
Sure.
I heard you say depression. And I hope you don't mind me saying in one of our past dialogues, I know you said to me that you're not one of the people that want to be on medication. So you're really working through your stuff in an active and engaged way. You're not suppressing it. You're not kind of medicating it. is what you're saying, Eddie? Is that the core of the worst arguments, that you're off, you're depressed?
Well, yeah, I would say actually now it's been some of the worst arguments we've ever had, and it's actually been more and more than it used to be. Again, idle hands, it's not a good thing. And, for myself, the reason, at least without going too much into my past, in my childhood, I was medicated heavily for a million different reasons. I've been to, 30 different therapists, over 10 different psychoanalysts in my life. And they all tried to prescribe my pain away. That's how I described it. And I just felt numb, and I feel like it regressed my growth. And in doing so, I've really just tried to stay away from it. I've been with tons of experts, and I feel the best way to do it is on my own, and of course through talking and being vulnerable, but definitely I need to be able to straighten my brain out on my own.
What is the worst fight you guys have ever had?
The one that when he stops short and I fly into when he drives, I think that we fight about that in such a bad way that sometimes I feel like that's the hard. We just had it. That's why I'm mentioning it, because the most important thing is that Eddie is a great driver, but he makes me feel anxiety in a very normal, natural drive to here. Yeah. And so I feel like sometimes we can argue about it in such a passionate way. I'm like, that doesn't, and then it goes away, and I'm like, why did we fight so hard?
Isn't that amazing how you have a fight?
It's so
stupid. It feels like the end of the relationship.
It's so in that moment,
and then the next day, or you look through a text. You look through a text a year later. For example,
I know,
and
you'd be embarrassed.
What in the world? Yeah.
You guys should hear the things I fight about.
No, oh man, no, I didn't mean that. I don't think we really mean it at the end of the day. Yeah. So I can't remember one that I was like, oh, well, he broke my heart. I'm like, yeah. I say you broke my heart, but then I'm like, he comes back and he always apologizes. So it's like, I love him. Yeah. I love him. He loves me and I love him.
Rabbi, before the next break, is there a paragon for a Jewish relationship? Does Chumash, is there an example that we should be looking at from a halachic or a Jewish wisdom perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to commend both Eddie and Diane for their sincerity and their honesty and their courage, because they're really looking at themselves. Eddie, you shared a great deal about not only the pain that you experienced throughout your life, but particularly during these last 14 months, and how challenging that time has been for you. And Diane, you really, whether you were cognizant or not, even when you went in and talked about your arguments, you were still supporting Eddie in the process. I don't know if you heard that within that interaction, and it was really something quite beautiful to hear. So in terms of, if we talk about Torah or the Bible, I look at the Torah as being a handbook of dysfunctional relationships. It is, yes. But it really is. It's really, stories of messed
I love you, Rabbi Sklar.
I love you too, Bubby. Who have their baggage to begin with. And, we all walk around with baggage. Some of us have little backpacks. Some of us have big old foot lockers. Some of us are willing to work with it, and others of us just bring it in and dump it on the floor into our relationship.
What are a couple of examples from Chumash, from the Bible that are of dysfunction that we can learn from? Dysfunctional relationships.
Well, let's go to Abraham and Sarah's son, Isaac. Let's be frank. He was a mama's boy. He never really dealt with those issues. Dad was willing to sacrifice him, and Dad was at the office with God all day. Isaac, grew up as, unfortunately, it's not maybe the PC way to put it, but he was a mama's boy. His father found a wife for him. He and Rebecca maybe connected the first night, when they went in the tent and had great sex. But after that, they were never on the same page with one another. They had 2 kids. Yeah. Each one favored one. And look what happened. No communication between the 2 of them. And it clearly, though the text doesn't tell us, the rift got bigger and bigger and bigger. So they were siding with one child, and that one child was siding with them. And boy, that was an unhealthy dynamic going on.
For sure.
So we see, and it's rife. I mean, that's just one example in the Bible. We see these things over and over.
Give us one other before the break. We're up on the break time, but I can't resist.
Well, okay, so you look at it, Jacob, who was a product of that marriage. He went in, and he had 2 wives. They fought, and they fought. And, he was pulled in different directions. The sisters were bitter. Or you go back to his grandparents, Abraham and Sarah. They wanted a baby. They had a surrogate child. He got, we say in modern parlance, he got the cleaning woman pregnant. And then look what happened between Abraham and Sarah.
Right.
She wasn't a happy woman. She got rid of the maid. She threw her out. They already had a baby. And, it didn't work. They weren't honest with each other.
Rivki in Borough Park, I know you are upset right now. I want to hear from you. Rabbi, we're going to take a break, but afterwards, help us make lemonade out of this. You tell us the lessons we're supposed. Because there are. By the way, I want to just for the Orthodox listeners who are getting red in the face and getting ready to send an email. Rabbi Simon Jacobson, who is kind of got that street cred in that world. Which, by the way, I've got one foot in, so I want to be clear. Feet in different worlds. Often says, I think very beautifully, that the lessons that we take from Chumash and Tanakh are not always prescriptive. They're often the opposite, the guide of what not to do and what doesn't work. And I can just say,
absolutely,
if we're all honest with ourselves, certainly in business life, and I also think, guys, I look around the room here in relationships, that we sometimes learn the most important lessons from the screw-ups. The screw-ups that we're conscious of, the ones that we actually don't suppress and deny and ignore and not acknowledge, but the screw-ups that we do acknowledge. And hopefully after the break, the brilliant Rabbi
Doug, if I could just interject, because I want Rivki and Mendel to understand, we're on the same side with all this. When I said it's a handbook of dysfunctional relationships, it's because the Torah wants us to reflect on our own lives, right, to look at what went wrong there and not to repeat those mistakes.
Yes.
So this is not a criticism of text. On the contrary, this is saying text is asking us to see what goes on and then look in our own mirrors.
Indeed. Beautifully said. We'll be right back with Rabbi Andrew Sklarz, Eddie and Diane Love, and our wonderful producer and therapist as well, Leah Mazniku. We'll be right back on Equal Footing.
So pull me closer. Why don't you pull me close? Why don't you come on over? I can't just let you go. Oh, baby. Why don't you just meet me in the middle?
Equal Footing with Dove Tusman is sponsored by MDCS Dermatology, your experts in skincare. With 2 Manhattan locations and 4 offices in Long Island, including Plainview and Commack, the dermatologists and skincare surgeons at MDCS are proud to be affiliated with the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and New York Presbyterian Hospital. So schedule your next skin exam in one of MDCS's convenient New York area locations. To make an appointment, go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-DERM. That's 212-661-3376. You can even schedule a virtual video visit with MDCS's board-certified dermatologists from the comfort and safety of your own home. So go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-3376. And don't forget to mention Equal Footing for 15% off all cosmetic procedures.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. I've been told.
This is so fun. I wish this was a 2-hour program tonight. Talking about relationships, talking about communication specifically in relationships. At the outset of the show, we mentioned that the biggest reason why couples divorce, 68%, different studies show different numbers, but are in this, that range, 68% in this one study I'm looking at, report breaking up because of communication breakdowns. And within that, the subsegments, the major subsegments are not seeing eye to eye, not communicating well as it comes to things like finances, the logistical, like life planning, relationship with God and religious observance, where there's different levels or bad communication around that, and stepping out, fidelity. And I'm wondering, Eddie and Diane, if you would be willing to talk about that last one for a moment. It's not a charged comment in the sense that I don't know what you've navigated in this world, and the show is not, we've done shows on navigating infidelity, but I'm wondering about maybe things like jealousy and possessiveness and the way, and, you know, the way that's, the way you've communicated around those issues, however you feel comfortable, you know, talking about it.
Well, let's start from, I guess, the very beginning. Eddie's been we've been very honest with one another. And I knew very early on the honesty level that, we shared was of, this is what I feel. And I'm actually saying exactly what I feel. And I felt like he wasn't lying. So everything that we do, we're pretty honest. And, if there was ever jealousy, it's probably a reflection on my thoughts of things, because I don't think that he would, intentionally try to make me feel jealous, because he's always uplifting me. So there's no chance of me like actually being like, oh, you made me feel this way. It's like, I must have thought it. I must have been, it's something of an insecurity of my own. But I don't know. How does it feel for you, Eddie?
So, if we're just talking jealousy in general, not a sexual nature, but just jealousy in general, jealousy for me comes in with her family, actually.
Oh.
My own family is, I learned very later on in my life, it finally switched in my brain, is a very selfish type of family and a very selective type of family. And when I met Diane, I met a family that is absolutely imperfect, but they have absolute love for one another. And blood runs very deep with them. And it is about family. It is how I would look at myself and how
so
I
you're
want.
not jealous of another man?
No,
not
at all. Not at all.
Like,
You're jealous of kind of the attention or relationship.
Yeah.
that she has with her family.
And that was a jealousy point
Yeah, I
for me
get
for a
that.
long time.
I felt
and
that.
I would say that that's always there, because, you know, you're so disappointed in your own family and you're dealing with your own issues on that side as well.
Yeah. Wow, guys, I'm listening to you speak, and I'm like answering the question in my head as well, and I could the list is so long. List is so long for me, but we only have 1 hour, so I'll shut up.
No, tell us. I, as a therapist, you can answer this either on either side of the couch, so to speak.
Yeah.
But where do you think communication breakdown is the worst, and do you think that? How do you feel? How do you relate to this issue around?
I think I'm very logical and emotional at extremes. Like, I feel like I'm very detached from my emotions, but then I feel them deeply. So in the breakdown in communication for me happens where I will raise my voice or overreact, not to last week's show, and will not be expressing my emotions clearly, yet in my head, I don't even feel them. So that's an interesting twist. And then I think what I've learned and need to do better in my adult life is to communicate to the person that I'm having a communication issue with that I need a little bit of time. I need 5 minutes, I need 10 minutes, and then I'll come back with a clearer head and just talk to you like you deserve, and like you deserve to be talked to. So that doesn't happen often, though.
That's good insight in terms of the kind of giving yourself the time to kind of get out of the rage or reactionary dynamic of the moment.
Yeah.
Eddie and Diane, I'm sorry to keep putting you in the spot, but do you think if there was, however you guys have your relationship set up, which is not my business exactly how that works, but whatever in your relationship would be defined as cheating, as betraying the other, whether it has to do with intimacy and sex or in some other way, a real betrayal. Do you think you have the communication tools as a couple to overcome that? Have you had to overcome that?
Yeah, actually, we have.
We have at the very, very,
Very
beginning
beginning.
of the relationship.
We also had a very quick, let's just call it like it was. We met right before the pandemic.
Yes.
We basically moved in together straight after that because I was moving out east with where I was working, and we got to know each other very quickly. So when things happen, they happen fast, and we fought a lot, but we would, figure it out. But when it comes to dishonesty, I think that we very quickly realize if you keep something a secret, then it can be worse. We must share it at first. If it's an intent to sort of hurt you, I feel like a secret would be intentional to hurt somebody. You never want to hurt me intentionally, so you keep things honest as always.
So what I would classify as a secret from Diane, and it's very different for us, and if I can be completely brutally honest, I think Diane's okay with me being honest like this. She already gave me the thumbs up. Is that from the very beginning, Diane understood and appreciated and respected that, first of all, I came out bi to my wife.
Woohoo!
I
Yeah.
then
Pride Month,
came out
Pride
that I love
Month.
being a nudist, that I love having an open relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we set certain parameters to that.
That happened like the first week.
And that happened
We
very
learned that
quickly.
very quickly.
We were very quick.
He was
on
like,
that
listen,
because
I'm not going to waste your
like
time.
machine
This is
gun
who I
fire.
am.
Yeah.
I was being very,
I did things quick,
cool.
but nope.
No, but I love that. I love that it came out right at the first week.
I was being very honest because at this point in my life, I needed to be honest with everybody I came into contact with.
Was it the
I
first
couldn't-
relationship that you've had that had that type of open and honest communication in that way?
To that extent, yes.
With the
to that
acceptance,
extent,
though, that was
and the
honest.
acceptance, yes.
Right.
Like I was.
But I also had told it to others, but with the knowing that if my relationship needed to just be monogamous and I was in love with this person, I could remove it. I thought I could remove it, I guess, is actually what I would say. Not that it ever already came up as an issue. Actually, on the contrary,
But you would curb it, maybe.
my ex-wife, I was married from 19 to 22. My ex-wife,
Oh yeah, he was married first.
my ex-wife
was married.
cheated on me.
How could he?
And I divorced her, even though I'm into open relationships and even I'm
Isn't
into
that
all
interesting?
these different aspects of my life.
At this
It's
point.
because it's about honesty.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
the
I want to
biggest thing,
actually.
honesty.
You'd think here I go with a segue, and you'd think I was going to go deeper into this very interesting topic of kind of how you have your relationship set up. But I'm going to do something a little different. Rabbi Sklarz, one of the issues that I always have when it comes to people preaching about good communication, and I might get the ire even of folks in the studio here, is this assumption that couples should have no secrets. And the research seems to belie that point, that there is an appropriate area, that private box, for you to have a certain degree of, just a kind of a area that is only your own. Is that just me that is kind of resonating with that, Rabbi Sklarz? What happens when you have couples talking about the difference between kind of honesty and holding secrets? Because they're not exactly polar opposites.
I think that every healthy relationship has a contract to it. Unfortunately, unhealthy relationships have certain contracts. But bottom line, that couples understand the places they can go together and the places that each person needs to be individually, and that needs to be respected. In all of our lives, there are times that we go into a room and we have to close the door and be by ourselves. And I think our partner needs to understand that. It doesn't mean that we're lying. It doesn't mean that we're being deceptive or duping them, but it just means that there's things we need for ourselves. Sure. But that's part of the open communication and part of the contract from the get-go, if we share. And, Eddie, you certainly not only honored the whole aspect of contracts, but you created that contract immediately when you and Diane moved in, and you opened up and you said, "This is who I am."
Mm-hmm. Sure did.
Yeah, I listeners who've been with us for a while know that I kind of overquote Khalil Gibran. He's one of my favorite poets, but he, I think, says kind of what you're saying in a very beautiful way in his poem on marriage. Rabbi says, "Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. for the pillar, I'm skipping a bit, but for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadows. And I feel like there's this idea in modern society that like the best communication is in always together. This, where everything is on the table, and to what Eddie and Diane we're talking about kind of like being no secrets. I'm stylizing guys a little bit, but it feels to me like a healthier relationship does also allow for space.
Let me get controversial. That's my favorite thing to do. I, on one hand agree, but to play the devil's advocate, I think there's something beautiful in having no shame, in revealing yourself to others. And it doesn't mean that you share everything about yourself, because of course there's things that we want to compartmentalize, etc. It's just that I think we're not really willing to be. It's so easy to keep a secret, right? It's so easy to not share. It's so easy to just be like, okay, like this is another part of me that my partner doesn't really like need to know about. But like do the work.
Might not like.
Or might not like, of course. But like do the work. Like be willing to be open even about the difficult stuff. And I'm not preaching or anything. It's just that it's a freeing feeling in having, and it's like it empowers you to be even more yourself. So yeah.
What do you think, Rabbi Sklar? Like, can a couple's contract work either way? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm in agreement. I think that secrets and privacy are two distinct things.
Yeah,
that's true.
I absolutely, we should not be ashamed of ourselves, and if we truly trust our partner, then we'll open up. But there are moments that we need to be with ourselves and our own thoughts. I'm going to go into another dimension, and I don't know if it's kosher for your show, but certainly there are couples in open relationships, and they share with each other that, and that's part of their contract. They don't need to share the nitty-gritty of all the details if they may be with someone else, but it's understood, so they're not hiding that. They may have certain interests that may not appeal to the other. They may pursue those interests. The partner knows, but again, they don't have to go into every single aspect of it. So it's not hiding. It's just allowing time for the privacy of the one part of the couple. Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let you off the hook on giving us that Jewish paragon of a good communication relationships. You told us some of the examples of what we shouldn't do, but we're after the break. I do want to get that out. We've had a couple of listeners who are calling me to task on that, Rabbi, to get that out of you. We're going to take our last break. We're here with Rabbi Andrew Sklar, who's also a therapist, another therapist, and also our executive producer, Leah Mazniku, and Diane and Eddie Love. We'll be right back.
Talk to you.
All right, we have this new sponsor over the last couple of months, and you gotta get into this. This is great. So on point for what we're about also here on Equal Footing in terms of building bridges, deepening your relationship with yourself and the ones you love. I'm talking about the Lola and Bear What If workshops. These are workshops that challenge you as a couple to go deeper, to break down barriers, release shame, explore fantasies, open up about those secrets we were talking about before. What if you and your partner lived without jealousy? What if you could be your full, unabashed self with your partner? What if you could finally overcome that past relationship trauma? If you've been with someone for a long time, what if you could feel as drawn to your partner as you did the first day you met? What if your relationship or marriage could be more honest and exciting than you ever thought possible? Check out these What If workshops. These are 3-day weekend affairs, held in the Catskills upstate. There are 1-day versions in the city. I'm going to give out the number to get more information. It's 848-305-9903. That's 848-305-9903. You can also go to lolaandbear.com. That's LOLAANDBER.com. lolaandbear.com. There are workshops coming up next weekend, June 16th to 18th, June 30th to July 2nd. There are a couple of others in July and August. Check it out. There's body work, nature walks, lake swims, and all sorts of journeys that are kind of therapeutic and somatic in nature. So cultivate a more positive and fulfilling connection with your current partner or maybe your future partner if you're single. The What If Workshops, 848-305-9903.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to.
Okay, Rabbi Sklarz, just so I don't forget, because we only have 10 minutes left. What is that paragon? What does Jewish wisdom in a nutshell tell us about communication as a, not modern psychology, but ancient Jewish wisdom tells us about communication?
What are we finding in the text in terms of relationships? Well, there are two things that come to mind. The first, I don't know if your listeners will necessarily love, but the paradigm of the most beautiful relationship we find in the Bible is between David and Jonathan. Now, that's not to say it was a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship, although there are those who speculate that it was, but it was of a great love between two people who cared deeply for each other. And clearly there was a commitment on all sides. Do we see things in later literature? In the Talmud, we see...
And we're willing to sacrifice for each other.
You got it.
To take the hit.
Willing to sacrifice for one another. So they were there. They were the consummate of friends, brothers, the other things that people have speculated upon. Who knows and who cares? But that really sets the paradigm for a loving relationship.
Okay, I love it. Not what I expected.
What did you expect of?
What were you
looking for?
I guess I expected a more like kind of traditional. These are rules that kind of flow out of Shomer Negia and the kind of, I don't know, traditional. Sometimes I get into a space where I see our faith as very rules based. So I guess I was expecting some rules.
I don't come from a halachic background.
Yeah.
I do not promote. Well, I should rephrase that. Everything is right for different people, but my framework is not Shomer Negia.
Yeah, that'll be for a different show, maybe with Manas Friedman or something.
Being in the mood of not letting other people off the hook, I'm not going to let you off the hook either, Dove. What has been your biggest challenge in communication?
Oy vey. It's not fair.
Yeah, you get to ask the questions now. You're being asked
in relationships.
Yeah, in relationships. The fun stuff.
I've struggled with fidelity for sure. What I've realized in recent times in my life is that what that struggle was really about. And I've struggled with communicating, I think, my need for validation, for kind of being told I'm okay when I feel I'm not. Meaning, I've dealt a lot with kind of self-loathing. Mm-hmm. And I've felt like if I really opened up with a partner about how much I deal with self-loathing, that they wouldn't be able to love me. Mm. And so I've covered that up over time. I don't think that that's my current challenge. I feel now that I actually resonate a lot with something that Diane were talking about, and just, actually, I think you said it, Lan, to be fair, about being a good assertive communicator and taking in the best way possible, taking the time, taking a break from the reaction and speaking from my heart more than, even if I logically feel, I'm right about this, getting more to the heart level and understanding where that other person was coming from. Is that good enough? Was that vulnerable
I
enough?
like that. Oh, that was good.
Okay.
Doing your homework.
I'm going to switch off this before anyone says anything else. Okay. We have some good questions. You ready, guys? We'll do some, you guys, everybody,
Ready.
including Rabbi Sklar's, ready for some rapid fire questions, comments that have come in. So Damien from Great Neck, wants us to go back to the issue of finances that, we've mentioned a couple of times, but we haven't got into it, and, actually says this all sounds a little airy-fairy. Okay.
Damien. Here we are opening our
Yeah.
hearts to you, and you're like,
Rabbi
Harry.
Rabbi Sklar's, does Damien have something? Is this a major issue in terms of communication breakdown? It seems the stats show it is, but what can you give us some helpful tips in this regard?
Absolutely. Finances can be a major problem within relationships when people, first of all, don't have their contracts set from the get-go, and when they approach things from a different perspective, and sometimes things get to the point that people are dishonest with one another, and it only gets worse and worse. But I've seen many couples in trouble because they didn't establish from the get-go what the parameters of their relationship would be vis-a-vis how they spent their money.
But what if you're already in it? You're like Flynn, like you're already in a relationship, you're 5 years in, you realize you didn't have that conversation, but you deeply love each other, you have kids together. What's the recipe now for figuring it out?
You got to find a good therapist.
We know a good one.
I'm being serious. Both as a rabbi and a therapist, I've seen couples who didn't deal with religion prior to marriage, and they were, in love, and they said it's all going to work out. They had kids, and they were coming from very different places. They needed to deal with that, and the same thing with any aspect that is going to have an impact upon the relationship. Absolutely,
Sure.
and it can be as minor as keeping the television set on too loud. My wife always gets angry because she tells me I make the TV too high. And we go, we didn't negotiate that early on.
I want to get to another one quick because we're out of time. We got to do it. We got to make this part one of part 2 or 3. So Eddie and Diane, for full disclosure, you guys don't have kids.
No.
Yet. And we have, Ellie is writing in, not telling us where he is, guessing from the area code in the New York area, and saying we haven't really touched on kids enough, and that he thinks that the biggest thing really that causes couples to break up is parenting style issues, disagreements around kids, and the fact that as a husband you go into second place. Hey, I think there's something there, guys.
Yes, that's real. And with 2 minutes left.
Yeah, so
that's oof.
Leah,
That's a good one to touch on.
So is
Ellie?
my husband in second place? Depends. Depends on the day.
So, Doug,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to jump in here, but I'm going to give you the answer on the next show. But I am a father, and I've been married for a while, so I will answer that in the future for you.
Okay, you know
Stay
media,
tuned,
don't
listeners.
you?
That's a nice teaser.
At least stay tuned.
Yeah, Leah, you we're a little interrupted there. You have like 30 seconds. What do you think? What do you say to Ellie if he's dealing with that? That's a real emotion.
That is a real emotion, and I feel I completely empathize with you, Ellie. The biggest challenges in my relationship have begun to be more pronounced after we became parents. So I feel you. I'm on the same boat with you. And what I want to pass on to you is an advice that someone gave to me is that you and your partner are not the enemy. Like your partner is not the enemy. The baby is the enemy. So remember that.
All right. Eddie and Diane.
I like that.
Thank you for joining
Nice
us.
wrap-up.
Leah, I love having you in studio. We got to do this more often.
Can't wait.
Rabbi Sklarz,
Yeah,
you're
I'll
booked.
come
You're
back.
booked for part 2 and 3.
Check out Rabbi Andrew Sklarz.
All right. We'll catch you next week.
Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. This I tell you, brother, you can't have one without the other. Love and marriage It's an institute you can't disparage. Ask the local gentleman.